I never truly understood silence until it echoed in the space between us. It started subtly, a glance too long at her phone, a hesitation before answering a question, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. For most people, these would be meaningless, harmless. But I've always been good at noticing patterns, especially the way hers changed. She used to laugh freely, without restraint, the kind of laugh that filled a room. But now that laughter had vanished, replaced by polite chuckles and vague nods. She began to go to bed earlier, turning away from me when she thought I was asleep. Her breathing gave her away, too steady, too practiced. I would lie beside her in the dark, wondering what thoughts kept her company while she shut me out. I told myself not to be paranoid. People change. Life gets heavy. Work was stressful. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe we both were. But doubt is a quiet thing, a seed that takes root in the still moments, and once it starts to grow, it doesn't stop. One evening, she left her laptop open. That alone was odd. She was always meticulous about her devices. Locked screens, closed tabs, wiped history. I wasn't proud of it, but I opened it. Curiosity isn't a choice when suspicion has already sunk its claws into you. There was a folder on the desktop, untitled, hidden in plain sight. Inside were photos, hundreds of them. They weren't of us. They weren't of family or friends. They were of her, but different. In some she was in places I didn't recognize. In others she looked unfamiliar. Her hair was styled differently. Her expressions didn't belong to the woman I married. She smiled in a way she never smiled with me. Mischievous, alive, electric. And then there were others, photos taken from a distance. Blurry shots of streets, houses, even children. None of whom I recognized. One photo in particular froze me in place. It was of a boy. 7, maybe 8. He had her eyes. The tilt of his smile was unmistakable. He was sitting on a bench next to a woman I'd never seen before. There were no names, no dates, just images. I closed the laptop, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. She came home not long after, humming to herself as she walked through the door, as if nothing had changed, as if everything was fine. She kissed me on the cheek, asked how my day was, and smiled. I wanted to confront her right then, but something stopped me, a voice in my head, low and urgent. Wait, watch. The next few days I pretended to be normal. I asked about her schedule, listened as she spoke about meetings and errands. She told me she was visiting her sister over the weekend. I knew she didn't have a sister. At least, not one she ever talked about. That was confirmation. She was lying, but why? I followed her. I waited until she left Saturday morning, then got in my car and kept my distance. She didn't go far, just a few towns over. I watched as she pulled into the driveway of a modest house nestled at the edge of a quiet neighborhood. She didn't knock. She used a key. She was inside for 2 hours. When she came out, she was smiling. She had a bag with her, something soft and folded, maybe clothes. Then the boy from the photo ran out the door, arms flailing, laughing. She bent down, scooped him into her arms, and kissed his forehead. I felt the air leave my lungs. She loved that boy. I could see it in the way she held him, how she touched his hair, how she lingered as he clung to her. It wasn't casual. It wasn't a friend's child. It was maternal. I didn't sleep that night. I tried to make sense of it. Did she have a child before we met? Was he hers? Why had she never told me? And who was the other woman? A friend, a relative, nothing fit, nothing made sense. The next day I confronted her. I asked about her weekend. She smiled and gave me the same lie. Her sister was doing well, she said. They'd had brunch, talked for hours. I nodded, watching her eyes carefully. There was no flicker of guilt. She was rehearsed. I asked her if she was happy. The question caught her off guard. She blinked, tilted her head, then smiled again, this time softer. Of course, she said. The problem with lies is that they pile up, they twist and tangle until the truth becomes unrecognizable. But the eyes don't lie. Hers held something she didn't want me to see. Over the next week, I became obsessed. I returned to the house when she was gone. I watched from the street, binoculars in hand, like some desperate detective. The boy played in the yard often. The other woman was always nearby. She was affectionate with him, but not in the same way my wife had been. One afternoon, I gathered the courage to knock on the door. She opened it, the woman from the photos. I introduced myself, told her I was conducting a neighborhood survey. She looked suspicious, but answered a few of my questions. Her name was unfamiliar. She said she'd lived there for 5 years. She never mentioned my wife, but in the background, the boy ran into the room, and when he saw me he froze. He stared at me, long and hard. Then without warning, he smiled. Daddy, the word hit me like a hammer. The woman turned pale, her eyes darted to me, then to him. I was frozen in place, my throat tightened. I'm sorry, she said quickly, pulling him back. He's confused. He watches too many cartoons. I stumbled out a response and left. I didn't remember the drive home. I didn't remember parking or unlocking the door. I sat on the couch in silence for what felt like hours. That night, I didn't say a word to her. I couldn't. The next morning she acted as if nothing had changed. But everything had. I spent the day gathering documents, our marriage certificate, medical records, anything I could find. I found nothing about a child, nothing that suggested she had been pregnant, but I remembered something. About 8 years ago, we separated briefly, just for a few months. We'd fought badly, I'd left, we hadn't spoken for weeks. When we reunited, she said she just needed time. I hadn't asked for details. I'd been too relieved. I called an old friend, someone who remembered that time. He told me she had been distant, quiet. Some people had whispered she was sick, others said she'd gone to stay with a cousin, but none of it mattered now. I confronted her again that night. I told her I knew about the boy. Her reaction was instant. The color drained from her face. Her shoulders sagged. She didn't deny it, didn't speak for what felt like an eternity. Then she sat down and began to cry. She told me everything. During our separation, she had met someone. Briefly, it hadn't lasted. She never told him she was pregnant. She'd been terrified. Alone, so she gave birth in secret, stayed with a distant relative, and gave custody to a friend who couldn't have children. She said she never planned to see him again. But she couldn't stay away. She visited occasionally, just to be close to him. She never meant for me to find out. I asked her why. Why lie? Why hide? Her voice cracked. Because I didn't want to lose you. I didn't respond. The silence returned, deeper than before. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, playing her words over and over in my mind. I remembered every moment of the past few years, every unexplained absence, every quiet night, every unspoken truth. I couldn't deny the truth. The boy looked like me, and her affair had taken place during our separation. It was possible, no probable, that he was mine. I demanded a test. She agreed. The results took days. Each one stretched like an eternity. When the email arrived, I hesitated. My hands shook as I clicked the file open. 99.9% probability. He was mine. I dropped the phone. I couldn't breathe. I'd spent years living a life built on half-truths. My son, my own flesh and blood, had grown up without me. She apologized every day. Said she wanted to make it right, that she'd tell the other woman, that she'd bring me into his life, if I wanted. But what did I want? I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know who she was. I watched videos of him, listened to his voice, looked at photos, memorized the contours of his face. I tried to picture what it would have been like to hold him as a baby, to teach him how to ride a bike, to tuck him in at night. Grief came in waves, not just for what I lost, but for what could never be fully repaired. One day I saw him again. From a distance, he was playing with a paper airplane, laughing as it soared through the air. I watched him turn toward me, and for a second, our eyes met. He didn't know who I was, but I knew who he was, and in that moment, I realized something. Some secrets don't destroy you in one swift blow. They unravel you slowly, quietly, until you're no longer sure where the truth ends, and the lie begins. And yet, even in that unraveling, there is a thread, faint, fragile, but present, hope. Not for the past, but maybe, just maybe, for the future.